This is a quick mic check. Councillor Carlson, can you hear us online?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Sibilance.
Thank you. You're coming through loud and clear. He's away. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Oh. I got it.
I'm here.
Do I
Yep.
have to hit her? I have to hit her.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to hit me. I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
I am here.
Excellent. And also with us is Councillor Crowson. Thank you.
Okay. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home of the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll begin with the consent agenda. Adoption of the agenda from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee on September 14th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Oh, gosh.
There we go. Mr. City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Then if there are no changes to the agenda, I will call for question.
Questions have been called. All in favor? Okay. Next is the consent agenda. From Councillor Carlson, be it resolved that the minutes of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee held on June 15th be approved and the chair and city clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the status of initiatives for September 14th, 2023 be received as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I reviewed the minutes and the initiatives. Unless there's any questions of my colleagues, I'll call for the vote.
Questions been called. All in favor? That is passed. All right. Let's get to our presentations. 5.1. I imagine we online we have Logan Bartholomew or Bartholow, sorry. Yes. Oh, there. All right. Are you the one making the presentation? Okay. And Alberta de Salvatierra. Right. Okay. Please take it away, whoever's going to speak.
Good afternoon, members of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee. Today I am joined virtually by Professor de Salvatierra from the University of Calgary School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape, and two groups of his graduate architecture students. Today they will be presenting the work they developed as part of a City of Lethbridge sponsored class through the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape. This class saw the students analyze and propose forward-thinking design concepts for a portion of downtown that included the Civic Commons, Galt Gardens, and a number of other key civic areas. The student work is a continuation of the Civic Commons Catalyst project that the City and School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape collaborated on in 2022. The Civic Commons Catalyst project, not to be confused with our Civic Commons area or Civic Commons master plan, was an effort spearheaded by Professor de Salvatierra to identify underutilized assets throughout the city and then provide recommendations for catalyzing those assets. Collaborative efforts between the city and its various post-secondary partners are incredibly important, and it's projects like these that drive innovation and forward thinking to find solutions that our cities, or challenges that our cities are facing today. When receiving these presentations, please keep in mind that this work is conceptual in nature, and the students were encouraged to dream big and think outside the box. This meant that entire buildings or blocks may have been redesigned or removed within their concepts, but the public can rest assured that we're not going to be bulldozing any buildings or anything like that to make way for these plans, but we may include some of the inspiration from these projects and various ideas as we plan future urban revitalization work. So I'll pass it along to Alberto to introduce this initiative on the university side. Then we have a couple presentations from the different student groups.
Thank you, Logan. Good afternoon, members of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee. My name is Alberto de Salvatierra. I'm Associate Dean Undergraduate and Associate Professor of Urbanism and Data and Architecture at the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at the University of Calgary. I'm also the Director of the Center for Civilization, a design research lab and think tank based at SAPL. The Civic Commons Catalyst initiative is our flagship project, aimed at taking underutilized spatial assets in Albertan cities and catalyzing them into positive assets for their communities that can revitalize their downtowns. The Civic Commons Catalyst is in identifying zones of opportunity so that assets can be networked together and help focus strategies for economic development and impact investment across our partner municipalities in Southern Alberta. Collaborations such as the one we have completed with the City of Lethbridge provide valuable learning opportunities to students as they are confronted with real-world challenges with real clients. Today, you will hear from the top 2 teams of graduate students in architecture who developed the strongest and most compelling future visions for the City of Lethbridge.
So I think we'll start off with the first group of students, and they'll give their presentation.
Okay, also, if you could just go back to the beginning slide, we can kind of start with the title slide. But good afternoon, everyone. Daniel, Megan, Taylor, and myself, Wesley, are excited to introduce our urban design proposal for downtown Lethbridge Harvest Trails, the intersection of agriculture and tourism. Harvest Trails is an innovative urban design project for the revisioning of Lethbridge's downtown that connects green spaces, orchards, and gardens through a carefully planned pathway system. By strategically placing these elements, the project promotes sustainable agriculture, enhances the urban environment, and creates inviting spaces for visitors and residents. Next slide. 2/3 of Canada's fruit is imported on an annual basis with continual increase in risk. Our group believes that creating a resilient economic backbone to the community around the agriculture and tourism of Hascat berries could be an excellent solution. Information was taken from the meeting with the City of Lethbridge back in May, alongside site analysis from data and observations. This facilitated a design logic that couples with the economic opportunity of Hascat berries to create an agriculture and tourism destination backed by an improved urban realm. Next slide. Located in the southern Alberta prairies, downtown Lethbridge is conveniently adjacent to the coulees and is within blocks of major highways that brings visitors, tourists, and Lethbridgians past the site on a daily basis. Next slide. During our visit to Lethbridge, the topography of the coulees were of interest in how outside the coulees is a flat prairie land. Next slide. High amounts of green space were observed in and around the coulee, but it then becomes sparse when transitioning into downtown. Next slide. These studies fostered initial goals of trying to pull green space and topography elements into the downtown. Next slide. There was also a cluster of small local businesses noted in the Northwest through our analysis. Next slide. In summation of these studies, a logic for redeveloping the downtown was created based on void spaces, which were identified as alleys, parking lots, and plazas. Next slide. A series of deliberate urban design and architectural moves were applied to the site. These include the removal of buildings nearing the end of their life cycle and creating a pathway system that utilizes neglected areas. It also includes the optimization of green spaces based on hours of sunlight. Greenery and trees were also implemented strategically based on analysis to create windbreaks. Altogether, these design moves work with the path to create an even distribution of activation across the site. Next slide. Lethbridge and the area are a strong climatic location for deploying large-scale Hascat reductions. Having reference to this in the downtown promotes a deeper understanding of the importance of agriculture while offering opportunities for recreational activities such as festivals. Next slide. A case study of fruit-themed festivals is the Cherry Festival in Michigan. A similar concept could be applied to Lethbridge using Hascats as the feature fruit. Next slide. This image showcases a lively plaza that displays the beauty and productivity of sustainable farming practices and their products. Next slide. The Lethbridge Hascat Festival will fall in late June to coordinate with natural harvest times and existing festivals in the area. Next slide. Lighting installations along the Berry Trail creates a new destination for families to enjoy the wintry weather. Next slide. Together, this proposal will engage the downtown through activated green spaces and newly oriented buildings that optimize solar exposure on the defined plazas. This approach ensures optimal growth conditions and provides an aesthetically pleasing and inviting atmosphere for people to explore and engage with nature. Next slide. The project occurs in 5 phases, beginning with the removal of buildings at the end of their life cycle, adding various new developments, and finishes with the addition of a district energy and water resilience system. Next slide. District Energy's operational energy cost savings coupled with rainwater harvesting creates resilient irrigation of the gardens and orchards along with stormwater management. Next slide. To ensure the launch of this plan, numerous grants are available that can couple with existing initiatives such as the implementation of a community revitalization levy and urban growth boundary to control the sprawling city. Next slide. This pathway system and program begins to activate the city on more than a 9-to-5 basis that it currently operates. This increases the eyes on the street and improves the perceived safety of the downtown core. Next slide. A key moment of the project begins at Galt Gardens and extends as a long and activated pedestrian street with greenery and plaza space. Next slide. Civic Commons is to become the true heart of the city as it should be, activated day and night. Reasons to come to downtown become endless for all age groups. Next slide. Overall, the project presents a new way to experience the city alongside new economic opportunities and has the potential to change and envision a future where urban spaces seamlessly blend with nature and agriculture, enriching the lives of both residents and visitors alike. Thank you.
Do we have more presentation?
We have one more presentation. We can either do questions now on this one, or we can have the second presentation and do questions together at the end.
All right, do we have any questions from any councillors right now? Okay, the decision I can't speak. I guess we're going to go on with the rest of the presentation. We'll ask questions after.
Okay, you ready?
We are ready.
Hello, Council. My name is Jordan. This is Josh, Jana, and Catherine. Our urban design proposal explores how to transform Lethbridge into a world-class maker city. Next slide, please. During our site visit, we took notice of the city's downtown character and personality through its architecture, historic sites, coffee shops, restaurants, and by chatting with locals. Next slide, please. We were particularly inspired by CASA, an incredible public makerspace with abundance of creative programming and access to tools. Walking through the downtown, it's evident that the city has a strong maker culture, a culture that, if leveraged with the right infrastructure, can revitalize the downtown. Next slide, please. A creative culture and maker infrastructure are key attributes found among the over 300 cities that form UNESCO's Creative City Network. These cities place creative and cultural industries at the heart of their urban development plans. We believe Lethbridge has the potential to join this network and become the first globally recognized creative city in Western Canada. Next slide, please. Lethbridge has a solid foundation of infrastructure to support the growth of its creative economy. There's room to develop more studio spaces, large-scale fabrication facilities, and grow its affordable housing stock downtown. There's also an opportunity to increase the presence of the local university and college within the site by embedding existing innovation and entrepreneurial programs like Agility from U of L and Agent out of Lethbridge College. Next slide, please. By turning downtown into the hub for creativity and innovation, the potential for something we call productive collisions increases, where the ideas exchange over coffee, plans hatch over a pint, or partnerships formed while sitting on a bench in the park can spontaneously occur. Citizens are empowered to collaborate, explore, and interact. Next slide, please. Transforming Lethbridge into a world-class maker city begins with leveraging its existing assets and enriching the urban fabric with a culture that is woven together by innovation, inclusivity, and generosity. Establishing downtown as a center for this vibrant, creative, and sharing economy, and investing in infrastructure to support making and living here will revitalize our site as citizens become empowered with the spaces and the tools to make their city. Next slide, please. To do this, our plan starts with leveraging existing assets, reprogram existing buildings, occupy alleyways and vacant lots, grow within, around, and through, weave together with the maker movement. Next slide, please. To understand where to make our interventions, we conducted a building inventory. marking different facades and buildings we thought should be preserved, revitalized, or have reached the end of their life cycle. This helped our designs to include as many existing buildings as we could. Next slide, please.
So the goal of our neighborhood strategy is to blend creativity and community by weaving together the urban fabric. Next slide, please. So this design intervention activates city blocks with new opportunities for collaborations, sharing, and increases the potential for creative collisions. Next slide, please. So our massing strategy is shown here, where orange is for living and making spaces, yellow is for gathering spaces, green is for green spaces, and blue is for circulation and movement through places. Next slide, please. So to implement these ideas, we have created a phasing strategy. So phase 1 is actually able to be activated immediately, building off of existing infrastructure like CASA and the Bowman building. Next slide, please. In the following phases, the maker culture builds outwards towards the rest of the downtown area. Next slide, please. So this might look like one of these spaces where public areas between buildings are activated through marketplaces, events, and parks. Next slide, please. But how would someone actually use these spaces? And how could they generate conversation and collaboration? Well, to demonstrate, we've mapped out a day in the life of 4 makers in this future Lethbridge. Next slide, please. So as they meander through these cityscapes, you'll note the introduction of urban furniture, inviting each person to spend time here together. So by occupying public space, these creatives generate the opportunity for creative collaborations. Next slide, please. As they move through the city, there are plenty of opportunities within and without the structures to weave together potential connections. Next slide, please. Events and parks within the city blocks will bring people into the downtown core, which leads to an enlivened, animated, and exciting city that people are truly drawn to. Next slide, please. So our exploration included looking at economic potentials and the weaving together of different city districts while leveraging access to the wider creative economy. With all of these assets at the city's fingertips, Lethbridge has the opportunity to join the Creative Cities Network and truly make the future here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all are those the presentations complete now? Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that to us. I did have a question. What was, for all of you to come before and make your presentations, one of the things I wonder about when you're looking at what you've created here is, what are some of the obstacles that you foresee that could be challenging to put your image or your concept into design, if someone can answer that? Everyone at the same time. No, go ahead.
Makers team, would you like to answer? And then perhaps Haska team?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
okay, thank you for your question,
Yep.
Councillor. Yeah, in terms of obstacles, I think what we've learned in architecture school is that there are a number of constraints, whether that's on the development side or the community side, making sure that these ideas are embedded in some sort of reality so they could be developed, but also getting the buy-in from the community as well. So yeah, I'm sure the other teams can add to that as well.
Okay. Any other, we have questions from some of my counselors here. We'll go to Jeff Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Taylor, Megan Taylor, was about to answer on behalf of her team, so I'll defer if she wanted to jump back in. Or if she shakes her head, then I'll run away, or then I'll go.
Thank you, Councillor. Feel free to continue.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess thank you for the presentations. I mean, they're very cool and exciting. One of our challenges to always, I mean, we're not making a city to live in today. Our challenge is to build a city for the future. everything we do is hopefully, well planned, well thought out through our capital program and through our annual budgets of slow incremental improvements. And it's nice to have a long-term vision when you're doing those. So I appreciate that. I love the fact that HASCAPs, which I had only ever heard of last year, are now taking the world, or at least Southern Alberta, by storm. So that was very cool. I guess I'm not sure who can answer this question, but it's probably someone from our administration or the professor Salvatierra. I hope I'm not butchering your name. I'll say Alberto. The question is what now? You've done these sort of visioning, these creative looks at where Lethbridge could be. And I know that in the background material, it said that our city staff is going to be using these to sort of feed some exciting ideas and thoughts on projects going forward. But I'm also wondering, especially when I look at that some of these were economic catalysts to try and improve the economic situations in our community. Is there any, I don't know who's all in the audience, but I'm hoping there's folks from like Heart of the City, the BRZ, Allied Arts Council, Tourism Lethbridge, Economic Development Lethbridge. I know when I was in Heart of the City, these types of visions were what excited me to stay on that committee and make progress. So I'm just wondering, where do we go from here, or where do you folks go from here? Is it just assignment done and we're out of here, or is the plan to try and excite some external community groups to push council? Because we're old, we need a lot of pushing.
Logan, would you like to take a stab at that first question?
If you remember my question, I talk a lot.
Okay. Yeah, so I believe the next step from the SAPL team is that we'll be receiving sort of a final package of all the different groups' presentations. The two that presented to you today, as well as the other ones that weren't presenting today. I believe there were 8 in total. We'll be getting that final package and we'll be giving it into different departments internally to look at. We'll also be sharing that with different community organizations like the ones you mentioned, Heart of Our City Committee, BRZ. I'm sure there will be a lot of conversations that come out of that, because all the ideas that were developed by the students are incredibly exciting, and I'm sure, yeah, it'll prompt a lot of discussions. As for how we're going to use it internally, there's a lot of projects in the short term that are going forward that will be using this information and some of the inspiration and ideas that the students developed, and including those as we begin to look at what those projects might look like, especially as it relates to the Civic Commons area, because that was a topic of conversation for the students and was something that we were really excited by, to see how do they re-envision that site and what are the potentials for that site. I think there's a lot of potential when it comes to redevelopment or just visioning what it could be in 20 years and even beyond, especially when it comes to the economic side of things. And I think that's where we'll make sure that we have a really strong conversation with Economic Development Lethbridge to see how can we leverage the different ideas that the students brought up. And I'm sure that they're already looking at a lot of those, but yeah, a lot of exciting conversations to come.
Excellent. Yes, I know. I think it's internally. It's
Carlson,
sorry.
Could I add to Logan's answer?
Yes, please.
So I think in very practical terms, many of these students are graduating this year. So the city of Lethbridge is looking to expand its team and hire bright young minds that have fresh new ideas and talent that bring together finance innovation, public policy, urban design, and design strategies for community engagement. Right, that could be one potential step. But to echo Logan's thoughts, I think the ways in which this collaboration or the results from this collaboration There's multiple different pathways, and that will depend on the appetite of council and city administration.
Thank you for that, and let me add my congratulations on graduation. How exciting! And I know that Councillor Croson, I'm glad to see Councillor Croson in chambers today. She and I worked closely on the Civic Common Master Plan, and so to see a lot of your thought going into that area to activate and excite that was excellent. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate the work, and again, congratulations, folks.
Thank you very much, and send your resumes to, what's the name? Anyway, next up, Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentations, and it's great to see you all again. I know I spoke with you for a little bit on behalf of the Historical Society there. I will mention that the fact that you're all knocking down my buildings is interesting, but we won't go down that route. One thing both groups commented on was the need to activate little used or unused space. And we have that in abundance in the downtown. When you look at some of our amazing corners that are taken up by parking lots, and you think of the back alleys, and you think of all that, if you couldn't do your entire vision, and if we just said, give us one really good idea for activating some of that unused space, what is that low-hanging fruit that you would say to the city of Lethbridge, go do this tomorrow? And so, either group, anybody who has, what is that idea that you just want to make sure we know?
Hi, Janessa. Thank you for the question. In terms of our project, I think probably the easiest installation that comes to mind is right beside Civic Commons. There's the kind of area that has a parking lot, and we could easily integrate sort of farmers market that kind of weaves into the alleyway, and that would flow out into the Civic Commons.
Anyone else have one that they're like, oh, you must do this?
I think on our end, I think we'd probably echo that statement of Civic Commons just has a great opportunity for being able to activate, pulling people back into the downtown, but not so much, or activating a space that is currently underutilized. I think it has a great potential for creating that opportunity for farmers markets and bringing in, even if you look at from both groups' ideas, bringing in the idea of maker spaces or maker sales and farming goods in that sense. I think there's a great collaboration opportunity between the two.
The other thing, and again, this one goes more to the Haskap berries, which are native to Canada, or something that we should be definitely looking more into. We have, like pear trees growing on Fifth Avenue South, but they're not very edible. And we're trying to get more edible plants into our parks and into our areas. Is that something that could be an easy win with Haskap berries? Can they grow in places and just you harvest on your own? Or are they things that need to be babied and actually farmed well?
Thank you for the question. They do grow quite easily in our native climate right now. They're actually quite a hardy plant that bloom later in season than a lot of other plants. So we see quite high fruit production. We do have in our project some opportunity for community gardens that would be maintained with some community and senior living areas. But then of course that could just be developed with the entire community, people bringing to downtown. So definitely that is a viable option with it.
So I can look forward to finding Haskap berries in our parks soon and just harvesting my own. All right, well, thank you very much. And again, congratulations. These are amazing projects to look through.
Next up, Councillor Jennifer Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to everyone for the work that you've done on these projects. They are tremendous and very exciting. I was with Lethbridge Public Library when the Civic Commons Master Plan was being formed, so I sort of took a look at it from that point of view too, and saw some of what the plans in and around the library space were, which was very interesting to me to see that included on these plans. The one question I have for everyone in the group who may want to respond to this is that you submitted these final project projects to us. But what are some of those ideas that didn't make it into these final presentations that you wish had and that you'd like to make us aware of? So whoever wants to answer that first or start that.
I think from the maker team, I can't think off the top of my head if there was any idea that we had to exclude. We tried our best to include as many of our ideas as possible. I think the idea being that creating the Civic Commons as a place for lots of different potential ideas to flourish and blossom there. And so I think maybe I would add to if we could include, or maybe one of the first, if we could only pick one thing to do, it would be to open up more studio spaces for budding entrepreneurs and creatives. We talked to a few people during our site visit who were just starting their creative businesses and didn't have any accessible space to launch their creative businesses. So that would be something very easy to do to kind of spark some creativity in the downtown core.
Thank you. And then for the question as well, I think for our group, we would just like to exemplify and echo that this project allows for a lot of partnerships. So within the project, we allowed for space that partners with Lethbridge University. We have a place that would work on bioengineering of new Hascat plants, proliferate the growth for longer seasons and to maximize fruit production. We also thought we could partner with culinary schools so that we could create better products that we would then be selling within the community that would increase economic output. But then also it gets down to the families as well. So with this redevelopment, we're trying to extend the time, as we mentioned, but also the group that's able to enjoy downtown. And then it's not an all or none. There's small implementations that we can make that will have a large change. And even though it doesn't all have to happen at once, we can still see the growth.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Bartholomew.
Thanks. Just to add to that a little bit, for some context, these students worked on these projects for an entire semester condensed down into 2 months. There was a lot of content that they developed, and I'm sure they could speak to it a little bit better, but they had to condense a lot of the information that they had into a 5-minute presentation. We'll be sharing the final product that we receive with council as well. One thing that was commonly talked about and that the students thought a lot about was the community aspect as well. So in the presentations, there was a lot of focus on the built form, but they were also looking at how do you make the community better? Because you can build all these spaces, but then who's going to fill them? How do you fill them? And how do you create those connections among people? So I think that was just one other thing that I wanted to add.
I'm curious of everyone on the presentation. Were there people who are from Lethbridge and maybe had a real personal sort of commitment to the project, or was this taking ideas from other cities, from other scenarios? I mean, I just wondered some of your personal feelings about getting to this city and doing the work in this area. Just if you can comment on that. Anybody who wants to.
Yeah, thanks for your question. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. No, none of us are from Lethbridge. I'll get that off the bat, but myself, I'm from Red Deer. So we see a lot of the same qualities of the downtown core, how it empties out after 5 o'clock and you don't really find too much going on there on the weekends other than the occasional festival and coffee shop. So that was a particular excitement of trying to reactivate that space. I'll pass it over to Taylor.
Yeah, I think I was just going to add sort of the same thing. None of us are from Lethbridge, but I think a few are from smaller cities and smaller towns in Alberta and just have, I don't know, kind of grown up in these areas and watched some development and probably just have some experience that way that kind of has driven us through these projects as well.
Anyone else want to comment on their own personal perspective?
Well, perhaps I can add a broader contextual piece.
Sure.
The students, before beginning this project, we engaged with the city of Lethbridge, had a whole weekend where the students visited the site, explored the city. We met with various people across departments from the city of Lethbridge, and the students themselves took it upon themselves to engage with the community as they did the field research and work. The students were also provided with a comprehensive data package as part of the Civic Commons Catalyst initiative in order to prep them for this work. So once they began with their urban design proposals, they had already been situated within the Lethbridge context in order to better provide recommendations that align with the local community, the local context, and sort of the local needs of the city.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues?
Mr. Chair,
I see Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I thought I just heard you were in town for 2 days to visit the city and explore the site. When was that?
That was in the first weekend of May. So we arrived there Thursday night. We left on Sunday. So it was May 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Excellent. I think the weather was really good that week. So my question, and I always pick the brains of visitors. So since you mentioned that you all visited, I'm going to pick your brains if I can. Did you have any free time? Did you get to do anything fun? What would you say was your favorite thing about visiting Lethbridge? It's going to be my first question to everyone. And the second one is there anything you said, oh God, if they only had X, Y, Z, that would be amazing. So if you guys could just help me by saying what was your favorite thing to visit, see, do, whatever it was, and what did you say? Crap, I can't believe they don't have that.
Makers,
So I'll start us off here. Sure. Thank you for the questions. I think for me, the proximity to the coulees was a real highlight. I hadn't spent that much time in Lethbridge. I'm born and raised here in Calgary, and didn't really know that Lethbridge was as beautiful as it is. And so we spent a lot of time exploring the coulees. And then I'll give another one. Finding out about CASA was an incredible highlight, and definitely considered maybe I could come down and live in Lethbridge and work out of there. And then I guess the follow-up thought to that was, where could I live? And I think the desire to live downtown was probably on top of mind, and kind of the opportunity for more housing down there was something that we noticed.
Agreed on all those points. I love CASA. Anyone else has some tips and suggestions for me? No? Jordan is busy trying to think, what did I do? What did I do?
Yeah, I guess I can kind of second to Josh's, like the first night that we got into Lethbridge, like I went down into the coulees for a run, and just moving to Southern Alberta a few years ago, like I would have never imagined a place like that out here in like the prairies. So that was really beautiful. But I guess like the thing that's almost keeping me from moving from Lethbridge is kind of like what Josh was saying in a way, is like kind of that density issue where Lethbridge is kind of running into the same thing that Calgary is, and the urban sprawl is getting worse and worse because there's just all this abundance of land. So I guess kind of like that densifying of and like kind of what the focus of this project was, like the revitalization of that downtown area.
Agreed. I want to live downtown too. So agreed. Anyone have anything different they want to throw at me?
Yeah, I have one. We were kind of in theme with our concept. We were delighted to see that there was some kind of like edible networking going on in the downtown just a little bit, which was a strong driver for our concept, I would say too. But yeah, it was very cool to see. We found some of the maps and the data online about what's established already, and that was really exciting for us, I think.
Oh. All right, I won't put anyone else on the spot. I was hoping someone would have said the Owl pub downtown. That's my favorite
Trivia
place.
night.
any night. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Any other comments from our presenters? Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your concepts and your ideas. It's really exciting to see what kind of ideas you have. So I appreciate what you've done. And so we'll move it forward. Take this. Resolution from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommends the City Council receive the University of Calgary School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape report as information. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much to our presenters and to the class that presented today. And congratulations again on your upcoming graduation. The goal of the class was for students to explore forward-thinking and innovative concepts to revitalize a portion of the downtown core. 2 student groups presented a condensed version of what they did today, and we are looking forward to full conceptual plans and projects to come forward for us to take a look at in the future, and for those to be forwarded on to our community groups who will have some other expertise and feedback in this area, and see what we can pull out to put in practice in downtown. If none of my colleagues have any other questions, I will call for the vote.
Vote's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Come to Lethbridge, stay longer. Get a job. Yeah. Well, I am an old man. Get a job, you kids. Come on down here. Doggone it. Put up a building or something. I forgot. Okay, right. Okay. Southern Alberta Art Gallery, fee for service and lease agreement. Ms. Bracken, do you want to come forward just in case we have questions for you? If anybody has questions, I'll read the resolution. This is also from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council, 1, approve the fee for service and lease agreement between the City of Lethbridge and the Southern Alberta Art Gallery for 2023 to 2026, and 2, approve lease payments by SAG to the City of Lethbridge in the amount of $25 per year, and 3, authorize the Mayor and City Clerk to sign the agreement. First off, do I have questions from any of my colleagues here? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably through you to Ms. Bracken, if I can. It looks like a fairly new format for our agreement with folks. I appreciate the work done. I appreciate seeing that there are measurables embedded in the agreement and tracking tools. Is that something council needs to perhaps weigh in on? I guess my question was, this was basically done, the organization's administration to our administration. Was there any point that council should have said, this is actually a measurable we'd like to track, or this is something we think is an important outcome?
Ms. Bracken?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Carlson. Historically, what you've described has been the practice that has been followed to establish these performance measures. I think from administration's perspective, our hope is that the culture plan will be kind of the tool that will connect these agreements with council policy, and then through that council policy, the development of performance measures that would connect with directives, visions, ideas that council has approved. As it stands right now, we don't have any cultural policy that we can use to guide the development of these performance measures. A lot of the ones that you see in the agreements have been there for several iterations, things like financial reporting and providing us with an organizational annual report. The ones that we've added in these agreements, and I'm speaking both to the current one and the one that we'll be looking at next, are rooted in the Recreation and Culture Master Plan, which Council did view and I think at least receive for information. So that's the approach that administration has taken with these agreements.
Thank you for that, Ms. Bracken. You mentioned that these are sort of policy-based, and then also jumped right to where I was going is we don't have an arts policy or an arts and culture policy. Should we have one?
Councillor Carlson, I know that in a previous council action plan, the development of arts and culture policy was identified by council as a priority. Administration's response to that to date has been that we need to first establish a vision, which we'll do through the culture plan. Once that is finalized, then we can work with council to develop that needed policy.
Excellent, and that'll help you and your team going forward, I'm assuming.
And all of our partners as well, because the absence of policy doesn't necessarily mean that our partners aren't doing excellent work. It just means that we don't really have a formal written document that connects us all to common shared goals.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things, of course, we have to find a balance in whenever we do any services and whether we're looking for information from groups, is to find the balance between what we need to have and what their capacity is to do, especially when we're asking them to report. Do you think we have found the right balance here with our fee-for-service agreements between our needs for accountability, our needs for, like 34-page documents, and the capacities of the organizations with whom we're working?
Thank you, Councillor Croson, for the question. I can speak to the agreements that I work with, and then I don't know if my colleagues here want to speak more broadly about the relationships that we have across recreation and culture. All of us within recreation and culture strive to take really collaborative approaches when we develop these agreements, and then throughout the term of the agreements working with our partners. So the agreements that are in front of you today were developed jointly, providing the groups with a lot of opportunities for input and feedback. I think we can look to the most recent operating budget where those groups came forward with requests that council did respond to, which suggests to me, and just knowing kind of how straightforward the negotiations were, that the groups are feeling heard through the budget increases, and were provided a forum in the negotiations to comment on the agreement.
Those are exactly the words we like to hear, that they are being listened to, that they're part of it, and that we are striking the balance.
Yeah, we recognize that because we don't have the staff and just the way that these relationships have historically been established, that these are our partners in developing vital services to the community, services, programs, running facilities that really make Lethbridge what it is. So we need to work closely with them because they are very important.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bracken, for bringing this forward. Sort of to follow up on my colleagues' questions, we know that this is a new process and these were new for our partners. Was there any feedback that they offered to us on working through this process?
Thank you, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. I think this process is actually one that we have done before with the groups, going through these kind of collaborative fee-for-service agreement negotiations. I'm not sure if there's something more specific that you want me to comment upon.
More following up on the measurables that Councillor Carlson was talking about before when we worked together with them on these. Were there comments around those specifically?
Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I think there was some good dialogue in that area. It's challenging, especially a lot with a lot of our arts and culture groups, because the measurables, the deliverables are often very hard to quantify and report upon. So I think we've had some good dialogue around that. That being said, the framework that we have right now is pretty open to allow these groups to respond in ways that make sense to them through their annual reports, so that we're not adding unnecessary duplication of work or onerous reporting. I think we still do have some work to do once we get, hopefully, the culture plan finished and accepted, to make these performance measures, especially for the arts and culture groups, more specific to the work they do. Right now, they're good, they're better than what we've had, but they're still very high level.
So when we look at this, then we know that those arts and culture groups then are allowed to report back to the measurables that directly speak to the work that they are doing. It's not that, for example, SAG would be reporting this the exact same way as another fee-for-service organization, like the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association, because we know that they have different kinds of measurables. So that flexibility is built in there for those arts and culture groups, and we've had that dialogue.
That's correct, yeah. It makes it more challenging for us on the receiving end to then compare and kind of compile information and report out on it. But I think there's a richness in the data, and it also speaks to the kind of uniqueness of all the different facilities. So we don't want to lose that in favor of really standardizing a lot of it. That's how we've been doing it right now, recognizing that we're pretty new to this with these agreements.
Yeah, and that richness of data is only going to help us build out our arts and culture plans as we move forward as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Crowson mentioned something that triggered something in me. So maybe I'll ask through you to Ms. Bracken or Mr. Harper, whoever can answer. I'm not sure who else from administration is present today, but budgetary challenges they're sort of rampant across many organizations. One of the things I've heard over the last several years is the city has added pressures to folks, financial pressures in the forms of insurance coverage, just one item. And I noticed in these agreements, the groups are still responsible for all the insurance coverage. Is there any way we can help ameliorate that, with group coverage, like buying in bulk? I don't know how. I know when I bundle my home and auto insurance, I get a bit of a deal. So I'm just wondering if we've explored those possibilities rather than saying each group you're on your own.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Carlson. During budget deliberations, these types of pressures that were added to the fee-for-service groups were identified. So there were discussions about that. The increases in the fee-for-service budget allocations reflected those requests. So even though there was added pressure, that was taken into consideration during budget.
Agreed, and thanks, Mr. Harper. And I agree, but I'm just wondering, did we look at, could we bundle, so to speak, together? Because if we could save them money, then we can save us money because we don't have to give them the money to pay for it. So I'm just wondering if we've explored if there's any cost savings. I know insurance is going through the roof right now. So anything we could do to cut costs, would there be any cost savings in that, or is that just a pipe dream of mine?
As far as the insurance process goes, when we were having discussions with risk management internally, the conversations were around the actual building or the infrastructure versus the programming piece. Right. So the delineation between the two was key. We own the asset, so it's up to us to ensure that it is insured. Now, as far as the programming goes, during the conversations, we went down the path of, well, we don't really control the programming or what happens inside of those walls with the organization. So it was really up to them to ensure that they have proper coverage. Now, as far as a conversation about bundling the two, from my perspective, from my recollection, I don't think that was talked about.
Okay. Just something I'd like to keep top of mind. So thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from my colleagues? I see none. I will pass it over to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. I've already read the resolution. Anything else? Oh. Lisa, oh no. What have I done?
Once more.
Once more. Sorry. I don't understand this technology.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The City of Lethbridge has expressed the need to provide its residents with opportunities to experience contemporary art exhibits and related education opportunities. The Southern Alberta Art Gallery, operated by the Southern Alberta Art Gallery Operation, is a city-owned facility that supports Council's goals to make Lethbridge a culturally vibrant community. Working with the SAG administration, we have prepared an updated agreement between the city and SAG for the 2023-2026 operating years, and this is coming to us to approve to go to council to execute the agreement. And if there are no questions, I will call for the vote.
There are no questions. Vote's been called. All in favor? That's passed. Oh, wait. Ms. Bracken, since you're still here, we'll just move on to our next resolution. And this is moved by Councillor Carlson. I'll read the resolution, and if there's questions, we'll continue on. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council approve the fee-for-service and lease agreement between the City of Lethbridge and the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association, and approve lease payments by the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association to the City of Lethbridge in the amount of $25 per year, and authorize the Mayor and City Clerk to sign the agreement. Do I have any questions? I see none so far. Is there, Ms. Bracken, is there anything you'd like to add to what we've said here? I take that as a no.
No, I was waiting, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Just to say that the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association, along with many of our other cultural facilities, doing very well right now. They have a new executive director who's been with them for a few months, who's doing excellent work. Some really exciting programs coming up this weekend with Afrofest, and their always popular Taste of events continue. Their one next week is Taste of Mexico. So wonderful organization in our community, and I hope the community continues to support them moving forward as they have in the past.
Great. No other questions. I'll turn it back over to you, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just appreciate the work that's done. If anyone watching is wondering why there weren't many questions, we basically asked a lot of the similar questions of the previous agreement. They both apply there. But a lot of the work was done on this and funding and supporting these organizations during the budget. But thank our administration, their administration, for doing the work to bring this forward today. Just a final thought. I caught a glimpse just now as the camera panned of Councillor Croson. And she was wearing, I think it's the Dear Terry. Is that the Terry Fox Run shirt, Councillor? I think that's happening this Sunday. And if you're running, I'll be there to cheer you on. But nothing else, I call for the vote.
Vote's been called. All in favor? That passes. And that is the meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all. Take care.
Shoot a 70. Shoot a 70? Jeff, 70?
At maybe 90.